I remember doing it in the alley, getting up, and then I wake up and I'm in the hospital. And the doctor tells me, he said, if we hadn't found you, you'd be dead, and what do you think about that? And I told him, I said, you should have left me. First experience drinking was actually at the age of 13. My cousins were drinking with some neighbors. My cousin said that it would be a good idea for me to drink with them, and he asked my mom if I could drink with them, and my dad was like, no, that's not good. And my mom was kind of like, yeah, let him see what it's like, you know. So I drank for the first time at the age of 13. It was like, you know, 6 shots of tequila. It was a strange experience. I woke up with a hangover. My family was really disconnected. They weren't really, we weren't really a family unit. My dad kind of worked and did his own thing. My mom did her own thing. She stayed in the room. My mom was doing drugs. My dad probably occasionally, I never really saw him at a young age. He kind of hid it from me. It wasn't like an open thing. It wasn't like an open culture. You know, just kind of did the normal thing where I got a job and got my own place. And so what happened was I got my wife pregnant, and it seemed like the right thing to do was to get married, so we got married. Plus, you know, I had, you know, we had discussed it before that, and I really loved her. Around the age of 25 or 26, I was working in a liquor store in a neighborhood I grew up in. So, but for me, I started drinking at the end of my shift, and it became a more common thing. It started off a couple times a week, and then it became like 4 or 5 times a week, and then we'd go out afterwards, and it became more and more frequently and more frequently. So one day I had already been drinking while working, and a guy came through the drive-thru, and he was breaking up some white powder in front of me. And you know, at the age of 26, I decided to try cocaine for the first time. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I get some of that?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." So we did the transaction. I went into the bathroom and I did it, and that's kind of where everything kind of took off at the age of 26. The cocaine addiction escalated very quickly, and that increased my drinking quite a bit. If I wanted to wake up or I wanted to sober up a bit and continue the party a little bit, I would do some cocaine. You know, if I wanted to go to sleep or I wanted to like take it down a little bit, I would do some drinking. And so I kind of began to control my moods with drugs and alcohol. I used to have this habit of not talking about things until I had to. At that point at the liquor store, I was drinking before my shift even ended. I have a friend, and his girlfriend, her mom worked in the bank, and she's like, "Hey, you know, the phone bank's hiring a bunch of people, and you know, you can probably get a spot over there." They told me how they interviewed, what the questions were. You needed to sell them a pin, so I was all prepared for all of that. So I interviewed for that job drunk and high, so they didn't know the difference between me being sober and not, because they only knew the one version of me, and I was loaded when they met me. So that's how I worked every single day in that company for 2 years. And by now I'm actually taking pills as well. You know, my back had bothered me one day, and my mom offered me a pill to help my back, and I took it, and I really liked it. I liked the way it felt, so I added that kind of in the mix. About a year after working there at the bank, I noticed that if I didn't have one thing or another, whether it was the pills or the cocaine or the alcohol, that if I didn't have that right balance, I didn't quite feel the way I wanted to feel. It's crazy. It sounds present. Like I was preoccupied with whatever it is I needed to do to feel better. Anyway, so I tried stopping for a while, but at this point I wasn't suffering any consequences. Nobody was telling me I needed to stop. I didn't have any legal consequences. Realistically, it was me just trying to get the money under control, because now the money spending was kind of becoming a real bad thing. Like I was going through a lot of money, even with the 2 jobs. And at about a year and a half into working with that company, I got a phone call while I was working from my cousin telling me my mom had passed away from a Xanax and an oxycodone overdose. At that point, like any idea of stopping or trying to decrease how much I was doing kind of went out the window. I was already in a bad place before that happened, and this just escalated things even more. I was drinking in the morning, and I would fill a water bottle with vodka for lunch. And on my lunch break, I would drink that, go back to work. On the way home, buy another big bottle of vodka, and then finish the one I had from the day before. And that's what I did every day. And then in between that, you know, getting a hold of the drug dealer, you know, figuring out what I got to do to get the other things that I needed to do to be okay. And that only lasted for about 6 months before I lost my job there at that company. I only had like a certain amount of time I could miss, and I was already like down to where I only could miss 1 more day. I ended up getting pancreatitis from drinking, so I got hospitalized. Wasn't present enough to like say, hey, you know, I was in the hospital, I need to keep my job. I just let it go. When they told me they were firing me, I just accepted the fact that they were letting me go because I didn't know what else to do. I just needed to get loaded. And that's like 1 of 3 times that I got pancreatitis. So I got that, and the next year, From then, in the next year period, I got pancreatitis 3 times from drinking myself into pancreatitis. So actually in 2009, I detoxed from alcohol at this Detox Community Bridges. And the doctor told me when I went to the hospital before I went there, he said, everybody has so much they can drink in their entire life. You already drank all yours, you're done. If you continue to drink, you're gonna die. So that was enough to get me to quit drinking, but it wasn't enough to keep me from everything else. What I heard the doctor say is you can't drink anymore. What I didn't hear him say is you can't take pills, you can't do cocaine, you can't do meth, you can't take Xanax. I didn't hear any of that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So I switched from the alcohol over to the pills. To be clear, my mom died of that Xanax and oxycodone overdose, and I showed up to her funeral loaded. Like I couldn't go to I didn't know how to be sober at that point. And so I'm here with my family, I'm here with my friends, and I'm high because that's all I know how to be, right? And again, for the next 8 years, it's a bunch of chaos. I began to steal from stores and return to stores. I get caught running fake prescriptions, catch a couple felonies for that. And I did that for about a year. And then on the day that I had court for doing that, I couldn't go to court. I couldn't go to jail sick. I couldn't go, I couldn't do it. You know, at the age of 32, I tried heroin for the first time. It was something that was very obvious to me that I needed to do because it was more cost effective and it was more available, and so that's what I did. And I got my first prescription medications. I was buying them wherever I could and whatnot. And again, you know, my father passed away from this disease. I couldn't show up to his funeral sober. I had to be loaded to be there. Looking back at that part of my life from the time that I started doing drugs for one reason or another at the age of 25 up until that point, there was no real plan of anything. It was just me doing what I had to do to be okay to try to make things work and try to get by. And not a whole lot of extra thought other than I need to make sure that I stay loaded, because if I'm not loaded, I'm not going to be okay. I had lost hope at that point. At that point, there was no hope. I felt as though life was meant for suffering, like life was a punishment. There was nothing good in life. And so I was really depressed, and I thought about that all the time, about the idea of like, everybody would have been better off without me. My life is meaningless, my life is pointless. I go to detox, I tell myself I need to get off it physically, I get off of it physically, I come back out and I'm okay for a couple days or a week, and then I relapse. And I do this a few times, and finally she says I've had enough, I can't do it anymore, I'm taking the kids and I'm gonna go. I didn't understand that that was the only thing that was keeping me, I mean, I guess I did kind of, but like, I didn't know what it would be like with them gone. So I'm in my apartment and I'm considering killing myself because it's really all I have left is I don't want to be alive anymore. And I'm considering doing that, and I take the last thing of any value in the house and I take it to go pawn it. And it's a flute for my daughter's school, and it has the school's initials written on the case. So in order for me to pawn it, I have to actually paint over it with black nail polish and then take it to the pawn shop. And on my way to the pawn shop, as I'm crossing the crosswalk, a guy tells me, "Take care of yourself, Brady." And I turn around and I'm like, "Do I know you?" And he doesn't actually say anything to me. And I'm like really freaked out at this point. And I'm like, "Dude, do I know you?" And he just kept walking, and the light started to change, so I needed to get to the pawn shop so I could go get taken care of whatever I needed to get taken care of, so I didn't think anything more of it. And I pawned the flute, and I can't manage to find dope for the next 2 days. So I'm drinking and trying to do it that way, and it's not the answer, obviously. Like when you're physically addicted to another chemical, the alcohol just made me feel worse. After a while, I just decided that I was going to finally kill myself, and I went to do it, and I took the knife and I put it to my wrist, and I wasn't able to actually cut myself. And at this point, I prayed for the first time in I don't know how long, to a God I thought had abandoned me or was angry with me, or if he even ever actually cared. I was like, if you hate me so much, then just kill me, because I can't do it. And that's what I said. If you hate me so much, then just kill me. I'm tired of living like this. I can't do this anymore. So I called Comtrans to come pick me up, because they come and take you to the Detox. And so I called them up, and I forget I call them. And an hour later, I'm sitting on my couch, still thinking about killing myself. And I hear a knock on the door, and I think it's the drug dealer. And I'm like, oh, finally, so here's the drug dealer. So I got this relief. The idea that the drug dealer is at my door actually brings me a sense of peace, right? And I open the door, and it's the driver, and he says, "Are you ready to go?" So I have to make the decision again because I forgot all about it. So I decide I'm going to go, and I show up to this detox 2 days after the fact at the crosswalk. I come in, there's a guy sitting here at the desk, and there's a guy behind him. And the guy sitting behind the guy at the intake desk takes a look at me and says, "Did you hear me tell you to take care of yourself, Brady?" He said, "I worked with you 8 years ago at Wells Fargo," and I asked him, I said, "Why did you say that to me?" And he said, "You look like you were about to do something really bad." So I knew in that moment that something had happened. I really couldn't deny. And he starts talking to me and telling me I need to take the opportunity that God has given me, and I need to really like try to get sober, and I should get into rehabilitation. And I've never done rehabilitation. I've never done that whatsoever. And I really didn't know how to go about it. I didn't think I could afford it. I didn't have insurance, whatever that looks like. You know, thank God the state covers it. I didn't know the state that would cover. I thought that was something that you had to have a lot of money. Like rich people go to rehabilitation. I didn't know it was something that, you know, that if you didn't have a job that you could actually get into it. Like I didn't think that was possible. In detox this time, I had been going to meetings before, like in the detoxes that I'd gone to a few times before, but it really like just, I would hear what they would say and it would just be whatever. I would go in for the hour, and before the hour is up, I'm out to go sit on the couch or whatever else. And I picked up a big book. I picked up a book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started reading it. And I really related to a lot of the stuff that was in there in Bill's story. And so I read that, and so that's what I did. Whatever I did, I tried to do it to the best of my ability. And I had this idea that if I did these things, that it would make everything okay. I'd be able to get my family back, and everything would go back to exactly the way it was. And that's not the case, because, you know, I had done over a decade of harm, and I didn't, you know, wasn't looking at things realistically. I was kind of just looking at things a little foolishly. And about 6 months in, I make some amends with my ex and my kids and some other family members, and I'm making the amends with my wife, and she tells me that that we're not going to be together still. And you know, that was too much for me at that time. I got really depressed. I got really lost, and although I'd learned quite a bit about myself, and I knew that I began to have an idea of what addiction and alcoholism looked like, that it was actually kind of a disease and the way that works on the brain and everything. But I ended up drinking and using again. I was still unhappy. I thought I was miserable and things couldn't get any worse, but they did get worse. Every time I pick up and I start using and I start drinking again, things always get worse. No matter how bad I think they are or how miserable I think I am, whenever I drink and I use, things just still manage to get worse. And I fell back into that state of hopelessness, that like seriously, like where the mentality of like nothing matters, I have no purpose, I have no point, and I'm only going to suffer. And it only took a short period of time to fall back into that. So I kind of, I struggle. I get on some medications for depression for the first time. I really don't like the way that feels, but I take them anyways because I really, anything that might help, I'm going to try it out. And so I tried that for a while, but I couldn't stay sober still, even after trying to get back at it for that little period of time. And I came back down to Phoenix from Prescott, and I basically was homeless while I was down here in Phoenix for the first time. You know, I had nowhere to go. I could stay at my ex's for a little bits of time, but for a day or two. But then I was back out at the park or behind the store or whatever that was, and now I'm sleeping outside. And so one day I decided I'm gonna do heroin again. So 39, yeah, my first overdose at the age of 39. I was walking down the street. All I had was some vodka, and I had $20 to my name. And I knew that I wanted to score a little bit of heroin with that $20. And a guy asked me for $1. This other homeless guy asked me if I had $1. I was like, nah, but I got this vodka I stole from the store if you want to have some vodka. So we're drinking the vodka, right? He's the first person I asked. I said, do you know where we can possibly get some heroin at, where we can get some dope? He said, actually, yeah, it's right around the corner. We can go over there. We can get it. So we go get that, and I'm in this alley with this other homeless guy, and I shoot heroin again, intravenously for the first time. Gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and I overdosed for the first time. I had finally done it. Like, I had never had the courage to kill myself, and I finally passed away. I wasn't crying because I was embarrassed. I was crying out of disappointment. Like, I was still alive. I was so broken at this point that I was absolutely, my chance for relief had been taken from me. Death isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is being alive and being miserable. And I did that for a very long time. They told me that they wanted to get me help. I told them there was no point in getting me help. I had done all that before. It didn't work for me, and it wasn't going to work for me now. So I still tried it out for another week, and then finally I decided I was going to get help again. So I went to Banner Thunderbird. I was there for 6 weeks in their psychiatric unit while they tried to help me figure out what was going to work for me. And I left from there to a treatment center finally, and I got sober at this treatment center, and I really tried to apply myself, and I got sober for about 1.5 years. I started as a busser at this restaurant, and again, the whole honesty, integrity, and the humility thing paid off for me, right? Like if I didn't know something, I admitted I didn't know something, right? If I made a mistake, I own that mistake. And I would try to help other people to the best of my ability. And I did really well at this company. I went from being the busser through all the positions into running 3 restaurants for the owner. And now I kind of had all this stuff I never had for a very long time that I thought would be the answer. And also on top of that, I felt important. And so my job became the most important thing in the world to me, right? And my recovery kind of took a back seat to my job. And I started to really be unhappy at work, and I really started to be unhappy in my personal relationships. And I was really stressed out one day at work, and I decided I was going to drink after about 1.5 years of being sober again. And at this point, I have my son living with me again. And I have my own apartment, I have my own car, and I have a really good job that pays a lot of money. I have everything you could think that somebody would want in order to stay sober and live a productive life. And that's when I finally really recognized the depths of this disease. Like what it really looks like is like at some point or another, if I don't take care of myself, if I don't treat the disease with whatever it is that I treat it with, that I'll fall back into that mentality, and then drugs and alcohol are going to seem like a good idea. Or not even necessarily a good idea, but what I need to do right then to be okay. So my mind will tell me. The 12-step program has made such a difference for me, and even in those times it did, I didn't really practice it a whole lot at that point, and that's really where I fell short, was I wasn't staying connected with my fellowship, I wasn't being honest with my sponsor, wasn't being honest with myself. My job became a priority. I lost everything, my apartment, my car. I overdosed twice in a 5-day period, and the second time the fire department was called out, and my son was living with me. So that caused a lot of issues. So he moved back with his mom. And I realized at this point, because on that final relapse, from the minute I drank for the first time, there was no relief to be found. I didn't get like that relief that you would think you get. It just never came. Just that old hopelessness of like, what am I doing? What's the point? I fell back into that mindset. As soon as I drink or I use, I fall back into that mindset of nothing else matters. And that's been my experience. And so I went back to the hospital. I did that deal again, and I went back to the treatment center. And this time, I came back to the treatment center, and I knew the relief was in the program. I knew the relief was in working on myself, the way I think and the way I feel, and getting spiritually connected and doing the 12-step program. So I threw myself into it, even though I didn't feel like it, and I really got into it. And at the 30-day mark, I kind of had an opportunity to either volunteer for this treatment center that had just helped me rebuild my life, which had very little promise, like 29 hours a week, $11 an hour, even if I do get hired on, right? Or I can go back to this job where I make $80,000 a year, right? And I'm working with my sponsor, and we weigh the decision out. And if you take the money out of the equation, I was really unhappy at the other job. I didn't have the ability to focus on myself. And it was really just about me feeling good about who I am. Not about what I do, but me feeling better about me, like my ego, my pride. Or the opportunity to work with other alcoholics and drug addicts. I wanted to do something different. And I really wanted to give back. So I took the job with the treatment center. And I took that job, and as soon as I had a little bit of freedom, I started going to this meeting hall that I go to. And I was there 3 times a day. I was there 3 times a day. I would go there sometimes 4 times a day. And all the people that were in the meetings, I paid attention to who was at the meetings. And every day that I went, when I saw the same people and I saw all the people who were there on a regular basis, I got to know those people first. So that way when I show up, I felt more comfortable. And I tried showing up early because I had a little bit of anxiety about being around a lot of people. And I don't like walking into a room full of people at this point in my life. And so I tried to be there first, that way I can see people as they come in and I'd be more comfortable. So I started doing these different things to create more comfortability, because I knew I had to be there. I knew I had to be there at this point. And I got involved. I showed up, I got service commitments, and I fell into this circle of friends that I have today. We do so much stuff together. Whatever free time I have, I spend with those people. They actually care about me as a human being, and I care about them. I would say today, now, here I am a year later, my sobriety date is September 5th, 2018 this time, and hopefully that's gonna be the last time. As far as I can tell, as long as I do what I know to do, I'll be okay. Make my recovery a priority this time, which is what I've been doing. Like, no matter how crazy things get, and things do get crazy in sobriety, and they have, and I get emotional, and I have difficulties, and there's certain things that I don't like, but I always make my recovery number one, no matter what, even if I don't feel like it. And it's been a life-changing experience. These people that I have in my life today, I care about them, and they care about me. I participate when I can. I have an understanding today. My life is better today than I think it was before I even started using and drinking. I take a look at who I am as a human being. I can accept myself for who I am today, which is the first time in my entire life that I can honestly take a look at myself and say, okay, that was a part of me, but it doesn't necessarily define me who I am as a human being. Like, that was a part of me, but that's not who I am today. But I accept the fact that that was me, right? I don't have to deny that part of myself anymore. I have the best relationships with my family that I think I've ever had. I mean, they're not the same as, like, probably not what their idea of, like, the best relationship is, but for me, I'm more honest, I'm more open, I show up when they need me to, and I really try to participate in my recovery in any way that I can. I try to give back. I came into this program, again, like I said, I had no hope. I was not a person you would look to find hope. Like, I'm sure that in the depths of my disease, I did not inspire hope in people. I felt lost, and even my family, some of my family were like, we had to accept the fact that you were dead. And that hurts, like when they tell you that you're as good as dead to them. Today, it's not like I can honestly say that I give back to the program. I have sponsees, I help guys, it's part of my job. I go out of my way if I can to help somebody. Today, I can honestly say that, like, I actually give people hope. So far from anything that I ever thought. If you asked me 4 years ago, I'd tell you there was no point in anything. I'd tell you that there was no purpose, there was no meaning, and that the only thing that you can do is just do your best to numb it all out. And that's what I truly believed. And that's what I did for the longest time, and I didn't think that I could be happy. I really didn't. I thought I could feel better. When I first came into recovery, I felt that I could feel better, but I didn't think I could be happy. So that was my motivation, was I felt better being sober, but I didn't think there was any real, like, purpose or happiness. It brought a little bit of relief. I feel like I have found some real happiness, that I have an opportunity to give back, and I try to do that when I can, but I know that it's important for me to keep track of where I'm at emotionally. Like, my emotional well-being is super important to me. My mental well-being is super important to me. And those things are tied together, and I used to separate the whole physical and mental parts of the addiction and disease, but those two things are tied together as well. I know that when you feel something emotionally, you can actually physically feel that. Instead of finding the differences, I try to find similarities. Today, I try to find what's keeping me from being connected to the people around me, and I try to make sure that I remove the negative things and replace those negative things with positive things. And that's something that I've learned in this program. I found that it's just like a garden, right? You weed out the negative stuff and you plant the positive stuff, right? And then you make sure you water that. And the more you water it, the healthier it gets, And just like a garden, if you don't water it, it'll die. And if it dies, I'm just right back into that point where, like, I'm losing hope again. And if I don't have hope, I'm that far away from a drink or doing drugs. I find a lot of hope being involved in recovery, and I can't really see myself doing much else other than this, so.
Detox to Rehab wants to help as many people as possible and do it the right way. Please subscribe, comment, and like our channel. Thank you for watching.